So this is how to beat the Trickstars. Trickstars now have a OTK using Firewall Dragon, as well as they already had the disruptive capabilities with Drawn Lockbird, which I forgot to put here to point it out. But that's an option, something they tech in. Drawn Lockbird, so it can get rid of your hand using cards like Disturbance Strategy, Present Card, but mainly Trickstar Reincarnation itself, since it's searchable with Candina's ability. Light Stage, of course, can search out with Candina. Candina can search out Light Stage or Reincarnation. You know, consistency. So they have that. I noticed that the Trickstars have other monsters that could be played, and Carol Bean is pretty good. If you control no monsters, or all your monsters you control are Trickstar monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. So this is pretty cool. If Trickstar player goes first, special summons this. This is a Light Fairy. Tribute it to normal summon a Sky Scourge Invisible, which has the effect that if you tribute a Light Fairy type monster, negate the effects of all spell cards. While this card is based up on the field, of course. So this is good against us. Any heavy spell-based decks, as well as Sky Strikers. So this is the video after I made the how to beat Sky Striker video. So this is how to beat the Trickstars, and if Sky Strikers or Trickstars are combined, if you just so happen to go up against the deck, obviously if you're playing Trickstars yourself, but not playing the other, the Trickstar and Sky Striker variant, Invisible would be a good tech card to have to help you against the Trickstar Sky Striker matchup, and against any other deck that's spell heavy, like Necross or something, right? They need their richest spell cards. Any fusion deck, any deck that tries to use scapegoats to link summon or whatever. Well, anyway, so obviously this is just for essentially pure Trickstar, which is Candina. When you normal summon, you can add a Trickstar card from your deck to your hand. Each time your opponent activates the spell or trap card, inflict 200 damage to them immediately after it resolves. So this is one way to burn your opponent, but the main way you want to burn your opponent if you're using Trickstars is Lycoris, because whatever your opponent is drawing, for each card they take 200 damage. So of course you use Trickstar Reincarnation in order to make them banish their entire hand, then draw a new hand equal to the number of cards they banished, and then they'll take 200 for each card they draw. If you have Light Stage on the field, they'll take 200 damage for each of those cards. So it's always, more burn. So since this is largely a burn-based deck, as well as they added an OTK to it, and they already had, and when they have the hand destruction ability, you gotta counter those three different methods, right? Or at least counter one versus the other. If you can counter the burn aspect, you have, you'll have life points that you can use to survive the OTK, right? Or at least be able to use your life points to activate certain card effects that will give you the ability to combat and beat the deck. Like, you might want to have 1500 life points to use for Solemn Strike, for example. Or if you use something like Skill Drain or anything of that nature. No, Skill Drain is not in here. There's tons of options in this game. I'm just showing you obviously the most basic stuff you could play or already are playing, because the whole idea is that if you're already playing these cards, well, you don't need a side deck to beat Trickstars or any deck you go up against. As long as you have certain basic abilities and effects in your deck, if you use them right, you can beat pretty much any deck you go up against. Because any Yu-Gi-Oh deck is just like any other Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Every deck is roughly the same. You have monsters, spells, and traps, and you have summoning, right? You have the ability. You have to. If you can negate all four of those things, you can beat any deck. No deck is really truly unbeatable. So MST, very useful, quick play. You can play it from your hand during your turn, so that comes in handy if your opponent just so happens to have a light stage on the field. Being able to play it as a, since it's a quick play, if your opponent just so happens to have Lycoris, light stage, and then the reincarnation combo, then you can make your hand smaller by playing MST or Twin Twister or even Cosmic Cyclone from your hand, so that we have less cards in your hands when Trickstar Reincarnation resolves, and you can get rid of the light stage, so that way the light stage won't be there to burn you for extra damage, and then you have less cards in your hands, so Reincarnation will only make you draw only a certain small amount of cards after it resolves, which means Lycoris will only burn you for only so much. So that's something you want to take into account. Also, if you go first and your opponent activates the light stage, you want to chain to it to help prevent them from being able to use it to pop your back row, prevent them from searching with it. Also, you just don't want them to have it in the field, because that's just will do you extra damage you just don't want to lose. You don't want to lose that life. Twin Twister, same thing. Especially if you go first and they have light stage, and then and they haven't even triggered the light stage yet or something, or they did trigger light stage, but it was on one of your other cards. It wasn't on your Twin Twister or MST, for example. That if they do set their Trickstar Reincarnation and with some other cards, and they end their turn, you can destroy their other cards, or you can destroy the one reincarnation they might have set and the light stage if you use Twin Twister. Before they end their turn, or even after they end their turn. Usually during the end phase will probably be the best time to do it, because then they can't use Reincarnation's graveyard effect. So there's that. Cosmic Cyclone, of course, helps you get rid of the reincarnation, so that way reincarnation can't use this graveyard effect. So by banishing it, doesn't negate, but it will slow them down, because you gotta think of resource. You gotta think that once after it resolves, the trap itself resolves and does something, it still has a use. It's still still a resource for your opponent. And the idea is to make sure your opponent has less resources, less stuff to do. So by playing Cosmic Cyclone to banish the reincarnation, even if you can't stop the reincarnation's effect from banishing your hand and whatnot, you can at least make sure that they won't have it in the reincarnation in the graveyard to use this graveyard effect. So that's one less resource they got. Then Solemn Strike, good for this, destroying any of the Trickstars, effects, or the Link monsters, or they try to make the Firewall Dragon. You can negate it, obviously, which is why it's important to try to save as much life as possible if you want to use this type of card. There's other options out there that don't require life points, but this is the most commonly used one, and it's pretty versatile, since it can negate effects as well as summons. Because if they already have the Firewall on the field, negating Firewall summoning is irrelevant now, right? Because he's already on the field. So being able to destroy Firewall Dragon after it's already on the field with this is useful. And of course, this helps break boards, so it's useful against any deck, but you can use it against Trickstars, of course, at the small cost of 1500, which is better than losing a whole hell of a lot of life from the deck's strategy, or just being OTK'd. Dark Bribe, to help you stop the reincarnations, maybe even just stopping light stage from being able to get them Candina, and Candina getting them the light stage, that type of stuff. Ultimate Providence, pretty versatile. You can negate spell, trap, or monster effect by discarding that card type from your hand. And it's a counter trap, so it'd be hard for your opponent to chain. So if they play a reincarnation, you play this and discard a trap, they can't chain another reincarnation on top of that. They have to wait until the chain resolves. Especially it comes in handy if they were trying to do a just in general, if they were trying to do a reincarnation draw and lockbird type of combo, you definitely want to try and prevent that. So having something that can interrupt and not be chained to is always useful, unless it's by another counter trap, right? Skill drain, just universally good for preventing monster effects. So this will prevent any of the, Firewall from doing what Firewall does, and prevents Invisibil's ability, any of the Link monsters' abilities, any of the main deck monsters' abilities on the field. So it's obviously generally good. Then you got, mainly the reincarnation, or if they also use present card into certain strategy, you want to stop those strategies, right? You want to stop them, so you can use Eradicate, Epidemic Virus, Call Trap, and then you'll be able to deal with those cards with this card, as well as if they have any other cards, like maybe some Floodgates or maybe some Strikes or whatever else they use in their deck, Impertinence or Evenly Matched, you'll be able to get rid of them with this, so that's always useful. Rivalry of the Warlord is mainly for when they are link summoning and whatnot. This can slow them down or prevent them from link summoning up into like a Firewall Dragon, because Firewall Dragon is a Cyberse. But all the Trickstar link monsters are very light if they're using them, and the main decks are very light, so Rivalry won't work against the main deck stuff or even some of the link monsters, but it will work against some of the non-Trickstar link monsters like Firewall Dragon, the Nightmares. See, here's a Fiend, this is a Fiend, and they're different. So goes and match the whole light, the whole attribute thing. Let's see, Firewall is light, so he won't be stopped from being summoned by goes and match. But if your opponent is going into some Nightmares or some other non-light link monsters to try to get to the Firewall Dragon, goes and match will be useful against that. It's not all about 100% stopping somebody, it's just about slowing them down enough to give you a fighting chance so you can find a way to beat them ultimately. Slowing down your opponent is just as important, or even more important, than flat out stopping them from doing something. Impertinence, since you could play from your hand. If you control no cards, target a face-out monster that your opponent controls and negates the effect until the end of the turn. That's useful if your opponent has a Lycris on the field and you're trying to avoid losing, life, a lot of life for Lycris's effect from when they do the reincarnation thing. And of course, reincarnation could potentially, make it where you add this to your hand, so you can use this to, do that. So that's the good thing about having some hand trap like abilities or cards you can play from your hand in response to certain things. Because against Trickstars, if they go first and they got their reincarnation, it's kind of hard to to go against reincarnation when it's something they could just play during standby phase or draw phase or something. And you haven't even played no cards yet, and already you have to deal with something, and that thing you're dealing with can ultimately stop you from even playing the game. So you gotta have something. So this will be useful. Just in general, if you have Fossil Diana, obviously this will prevent special summonings of Lycris if they do the Candina Lycris combo, or prevent link summonings, Firewall, that type of stuff. Could prevent this. Carabine. So obviously that's generically good to be able to prevent your opponent from special summoning. Curie Photon, because the deck has obviously burn capabilities, but also has a attack OTK capabilities. Curie Photon helps with both situations. If you're playing a Photon deck, this is reusable, also searchable in a Photon deck. It's a good hand trap, so it's good against burn based FTKs, good against OTKs. It's just generally good. Those are the two most common win conditions in the game anyway, OTKs and FTKs, right? Anything that reduces your life points down to 0 is very common in the game. So why not have a very common, you know, way to stop that, right? A hand trap that can stop OTKs and FTKs, right? Or at least let you survive. Then if you're playing a fairy type deck, or you're playing Trickstars, you know, there are fairies, you know, you have options like orange light and purple light. Purple light negates traps, so that'd be good against stuff like evenly match and impertinence, you know, Trickster reincarnations, you know, any trap that would be a problem other than a counter trap, of course. But if your opponent, you know, flips a skill drain to against you, you might want to stop that. You know, eradicator. So you see a lot of these options here are traps, and using purple light to stop that is always useful. You discard it with a light, with a fairy monster, and there you go. Orange light is good against monster effects, and there's a green light which does spells, but we're mainly focusing, especially against this deck, monsters and traps. Those are the ones you want to deal with the most. Spells is a little irrelevant. There's not that many spells they use, other than, you know, light stage and maybe some other staple spell cards, like for searching or drawing or something. So stop traps, stop monster effects. And this also destroys the monster, so it doesn't just negate the effect, but also destroys them. So it's very useful, stronger than Veiler in that regards. So then you have Ghost Ogre, Snow Rabbit, good against the light stage field spell. Once it goes to do the search, once they activate to search, you can use this to pop it from your hand, and then, you know, they won't have the field spell, so you don't have to worry about getting burned by the field spell's effect. So, and by having one less card in your hand because you discarded Snow Rabbit, if they do still already have the reincarnation to use against you, you have less cards in your hands that they'll vanish by reincarnation's effect. You can of course use Snow Rabbit against Candina's ability to search, you know, against anything else that has an effect, like, you know, Firewall. You can use it against Firewall Dragon if it uses his ability, obviously, and so forth, so forth. DD Chrome, useful again to minimize your opponent's resources, you know, getting rid of the reincarnations in the graveyard so they can't use it again later. Maybe even getting rid of any of the light Trickstars in the graveyard that they might want to recycle later through an effect like Firewall, you know, Dragon. You know, Firewall Dragon will use his ability to get something back from the graveyard into the hand. You can DD Crow it to prevent that. So in case they're doing a loop, you can, you know, stop the loop with a DD Crow, right? Or something that does what DD Crow does, right? Denko Sekka, very useful, especially if you go first. Going second, not as useful because of the fact that, you know, they can play the traps and stuff like that before you even get a chance to normal summon. But if for some reason they didn't do anything yet, and they're like waiting for some reason, and you normal summon Denko Sekka and they don't got the warning to negate its summoning, then they just screw themselves over, because now they can't even activate the traps, and that gives you a fighting chance, and then you can, you know, play your Twin Twisters, get rid of it and whatnot, you know, the back row and whatnot. So, but going first, this is useful to make it where it's like there's no point in setting any of your traps, because they won't be able to be activated as long as Denko Sekka stays on the field. Now, Denko Sekka is a good option, but not a perfect one. Obviously, you're going to have to play something to protect it, to keep it on the field a little bit longer. Preferably something face up, because if you have any set spells and traps, you won't have this effect. So you have to play face up spells and traps to keep Denko Sekka's effect active. Because they could just normal summon Candina and use Candina to run over your Denko Sekka, obviously. But if you have the Denko Sekka and then you have the Ghost Ogre in the hand, and they use Candina's effect to search, if they do the thing to search, use her effect to search, then you can just pop her with Ghost Ogre and not worry about that. Denko Sekka being, you know, killed. And Gamecell, if for some reason they don't yet have, you know, it's good if they got the Firewall Dragon. You might want to just kaiju it. If you're playing kaijus or whatnot, you can get rid of Lycris or any of the Trickstars that might have an effect that burns you. Any of their light, their link monsters. You can kaiju it, so that's always a good option. Because especially if you do a combo where you give them a kaiju, right, and then you play something like Goes a Match or Rivalry, for example. Since Gamma for example, is a water aqua, that will shut them down. That will prevent them from summoning any of their monsters, because this is an aqua water. None of the monsters in the main deck is aqua or water. So that's something to keep in mind, that you can combine these two cards with Gamma and lock your opponent down from summonings. Nightmare Phoenix, useful for popping the light stage, hopefully popping anything else that's on the field. That could be a prom, but mainly to get rid of the light stage. So they can't use light stage to pop your back row or make your back row useless. Give me a second. Pause. So you want to continue with Nightmare Cerberus. It will help you deal with any monster they special summon to the side of the field, like Lycris. Let's say they just so happen to have Carabine on the field. You can get rid of it with Cerberus's effect. Any first turn plays that allows you control, allows you to interrupt your opponent's plays is always useful. Something like Cyber Dragon Infinity, if you have the ability to go into this card, is useful because it can negate monster spell or traps. So you have options depending on whatever is more problematic. If the field spell and the Candina feels the life stage field spell and Candina is not much of a problem for you, you can easily deal with them. Then you want to use Cyber Dragon Infinity's effect against the Trickstar Reincarnation instead. So it just depends on the situation. You'll figure out how to utilize these cards. Evazar Logia, same thing. It can help you stop the summoning of something like a Firewall Dragon, or you can stop the spell and trap, either the field spell or Trickstar Reincarnation. And typically you'll try to stop the reincarnation more often than not. Being able to use Totally Awesome to stop the effect of reincarnation, then steal the reincarnation, and then use the reincarnation against your opponent. A lot of fun and very useful, of course. But being able to negate effects of stuff and whatnot and use it against your opponent is always useful. Barkion, the main problem you have the most will be against traps, like reincarnation, prison card, or the servant strategy. So this comes in handy for that. I didn't have it here, but I should have had it. Let me post it up real quick. That would be 1L, right? Yeah, Doka. There you go. Doka, because of its effect negation ability, you can use it more than once per turn. You can obviously use it to stop Candina. You can use it to stop Drawn Lockbird. Let's say somebody plays Drawn Lockbird, right, as part of their Trickstar Reincarnation strategy, and then you respond with Doka, and then they just discard another one on top of that, chaining to Doka's ability to try to still get the Drawn Lockbird effect off. Well, since you can negate more than once with Doka, negate the second copy, right? So that has its use. Being able to negate something like Firewall Dragon and whatnot is useful, as well as Candina or Lycris or any of the Trickstar monsters. Sheehan can stop spell or trap, so again it can stop the field spell, or it can stop the Trickstar Reincarnation. Let's say you have a Royal Decree on the field, so that will already take care of your trap problem, but your opponent has like an MST or some method that's spell based to get rid of your Royal Decree. you know, you can use obviously Xian to protect from that. Dawn Dragster, same thing as Xian. It can negate spell or trap, so you can use it however way you want. More likely use the trap part of its effect. Arc Light, same thing. By tributing it, you can stop a spell or trap or even a monster effect. While it's still on the field, while it's face up on the field, any monster sent from the hand or main deck to the graveyard is banished instead. So this is very useful against hand traps, you know, like the Draw Lockbird thing. So that's useful. Since the deck burns and you're trying to save your life points, and so that way your life points don't hit 0, Blackwing Dragon is a nice generic option. Level 8 synchro. If you play level 4 spellcasters, you can go into a Trapeze Magician, and as long as any damage your opponent tries to deal with, any Trickstar players trying to deal with you, for example, is 2,500 or less because it's based off his attack. So the stronger you make him, the more damage you could prevent. So if you give him like some type of power boost, you can survive. You know, you can negate more damage. But in general, most damage is less than 2,500. Some damage is 1,000, maybe 2,000 at most at any given time. So this is very good against that, and you know, it's an option. And it's 2,500, so it's a pretty good beater. You have this, and since it's a spellcaster, you can play like Secret Village or something that will help you deal with any spell cards problems you might deal with, as well as, you know, you prevent damage. So any traps that try to deal damage or any monster effect try to deal damage, this will prevent it. And the fact this is a spellcaster or Secret Village, you can lock out spells. So you don't have to worry about stuff like Dark Hole or Book of Moon or anything that would, you know, get rid of this monster relatively easy. They're going to have to rely on battle and monster effects, kaiju, right? And that's the end of the video.